Thank you. We had a report from the medical executive from Dr. Haynes. There was nothing to report out. We move on to the next agenda item, which is modification consideration. Any agenda modifications for members of the board? If we none, we'll close that. Move on to public comment on matters not on the agenda. Is there anybody online, Rosalie, that would like to address the board on matters not on the agenda?
No, sir, but I'm sorry, sir. Have you already called to order for the open session?
No, I didn't do that. I thought we did that earlier on before we went into closed session.
Oh, we did that for the closed session.
We can do it. Okay, please call roll call.
Yes, sir. Directors Cox?
Here.
Gallagher?
Here.
Nunez?
Here.
Pimentel?
Here.
Chair Friel?
Here.
Sir, you have a quorum for the regular session?
Okay. So public comment. Is there anybody online who wishes to address the board on items not on the agenda?
No.
Thank you. Anybody in the public present like to address the board on any items that are not on the agenda? Not seeing any, we can move on to comments from the board. Comments from the board,
I have two comments.
please.
One just is more to the staff who are present and the public who are watching. Of course, we have, it used to be rain. We panic over a little bit of rain, but we're hypersensitive to the quantity of rain we receive these days. We're in another atmospheric river trend. So the next couple of days, in the high mountain areas, there's some flood risks. So just be extra vigilant and extra careful over these next couple of days. Stay alert to weather conditions, stay alert to your phone on current rainfalls, and just beware and be mindful. We don't want anybody being hurt over these coming couple days. Second, I'm aware of a community meeting that the whole community is invited to attend this Saturday at 9:30 at Community Bridges. It'll be a great event for our community to get behind. A lot of local efforts that are being done to support healthcare in our community. So at 9:30 Saturday at Community Bridges, good food, some great speakers from our state government, and should be a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Learn more about that.
As I understand, you can go to yesonmeasurein.net, and there's a calendar of events there that's attributed to that.
Any other comments from the board before we move on to the consent calendar? Hearing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar. There are 8 items. I'm sorry, there are 5 items.
I'll move approval of consent.
I'll second that.
Anybody in the
Sir,
audience like to?
Tony, Director Nunez, you were the second, correct?
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
Anybody in the audience like to make a comment? Anybody online like to make a comment?
No one online.
We need to pull the board.
Yes,
Ask a
Directors
motion. We
Cox?
have to do-
Yes.
Director Gallagher?
Yes.
Nunez?
Yes.
Pimentel?
Yes.
Chair Friel?
Yes. So that covered the first 5 items under consent, right, Rosalie? So now the next
Right,
5
sir.
up for discussion. Correct?
Correct.
CEO report.
Right. So the first one is the CEO report. Steve?
Thank you, Chair Friel. So as I do, I'm going to go through in order of our strategic priorities for our January report. So for our community health and advocacy, we have had the opportunity over the last month to present updates about the hospital to a number of different community organizations and bodies. On January 9th, we had the opportunity to present to the Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors. All supervisors were universally supportive of the hospital and the work that the team has done over the last 15 months since coming under the district. And one of the supervisors went out of his way to say, quote, "Thank you to the 650 staff that you have. Would you please tell them that we really appreciate their being there and providing the needed services." So that was really nice. Director Nunez and I had the opportunity to go on a local radio program to talk about the hospital. And I have had the opportunity to join a number of our board members to give updates at Santa Cruz County Chamber of Commerce, the Pajaro Valley Chamber of Commerce, Watsonville Rotary, Central California Alliance for Health, the Santa Cruz County Farm Bureau, and tomorrow, the Santa Cruz Sunrise Rotary Club. So we are making the rounds, and I appreciate everybody joining me for those and getting just really great universal feedback from all of these groups and appreciation for everything that everybody here does. For provider recruitment, we had a really good meeting with a urologist yesterday who we're hoping will come to town to join our care teams from the Sacramento area. So we anticipate a response from him soon on next steps and whether he's got interest in continuing to pursue that possibility of coming here to join our clinic. And in the past month, we've had two gastroenterologists who are new to our service, that are new to providing care in our facility. And they've been in our special procedure suite and our OR. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to continue to care for more people in the gastroenterology service line.
Question on the urologist.
Yeah.
If he comes, would he be joining the group or would he be independent?
We're talking to him about Coastal Health, our 1206B clinic. Yeah. In quality and patient experience, the 2023 patient experience data, we had 66% of our patients who were surveyed rate us 9 or a 10 on a scale from 0 to 10. So that's good, but our goal for next year is going to be to improve to greater than 70% for all patients. You'll see that next month when I bring the dashboard and you get to see some of the, you get to see all the data. Interestingly, that number is 78.7% of our Spanish-speaking patients gave us a 9 or a 10 versus just 62.4% of our English-speaking patients gave us a 9 or a 10. For those of you stat nerds, that's actually a statistically significant difference between the two. I did run the t-test, Dr. Gallagher, if you were wondering. Because we have about 350 patients who completed that survey over the course of the year. So they're split up about 2/3 and 1/3 roughly. So we've got, we'll be embarking on some action plans around our patient experience scores. For talent and culture, our 2023 retention rate was 76%. Our goal is to improve upon that in 2024. Our target and best practice goals will actually be 85 and 90% retention rates. As of a couple weeks ago, when Allison sent me these numbers, we had 21 nursing positions open, 17 ancillary positions open, 2 management positions open, and 6 other professional positions open. But over the past couple of months, we've hired an emergency department director, an emergency department manager, interim cath lab director, an interim perioperative services director, and a new quality nurse specialist. So we are filling really key, important leadership roles. The ongoing search for a permanent perioperative services director is ongoing, and that's important. And as our medical staff leadership will tell you, we're also working on bringing in a permanent medical staff office manager and filling that role permanently as well. For clinical services and access, we ended the year seeing just about 33,000 patients in our emergency department. We transferred 2.47%, 2.5% of those patients to another facility for care that we could provide. We're not going to be able to provide services to every single patient who comes to our emergency department, but we do want to reduce that number to 2.3% or lower for 2024. So that'll be another one of our key metrics to measure the success of our ability to take care of patients here where they are. So new services like the cath lab will be able to keep some patients here who had to be transferred out previously. And I will defer the finance report to Julie. But before that, I'll take any questions.
Questions for Steve? Any questions from the audience for Steve? Anybody online for questions for the CEO, Rosalie?
No one online.
No one online, okay. So we can move on to item number 7, which is the CFO report. Julie?
I'll put this up for you.
All right, well, we're gonna cover how we finished up the year of December. We'll start with kind of the December month to date. While our volumes had picked up a little bit in December, we still did not meet what we had budgeted for volume. And we had a slightly less favorable payer mix, just comparing November to December. So, you know, we did end up with lower net operating revenue than budget. Also remembering that the budget had things like the cath lab that was not implemented last year. The couple of major favorable variances on the expense side really related to year-end activities. One being that we did a year-end inventory audit and ended up with a pickup of about 1.8 million. Meaning that, you know, we had supplies in-house that had not been recorded in the inventory. And so that was adjusted for and corrected, and that gives us favorability on the expense side. We also, in doing some of the year-end reconciliations, were able to identify some older invoices that had been canceled, but were still being accrued as a potential expense. And so those were reversed. That was about $1 million as well, between professional fees and supplies. So it really makes the month of December look much more favorable than it would have been, you know, under normal circumstances. But as you can see here, we ended with a favorable EBITDA of 573, almost 574,000 for the month. Next slide. So, you know, that really helps kind of the year-end numbers. Oops, can you go back a slide, Rosie? A couple slides. One, yeah, there we go. Thank you. So you can see that we finished the year at net operating revenue almost 25 million below budget. As we've talked all year long, that is primarily the decrease in volume. And you know, I did look at kind of a year-over-year payer mix and really did not find anything that was significant in terms of payer mix decline. It will vary a little bit from month to month, but when you compared to how we ended 22, our payer mix was really pretty similar in all the categories. We were, you know, $15 million favorable on our expense budget. You know, that does come from flexing to volume and less supplies with less volume, but certainly you're never able, it's very difficult to be, you know, dollar for dollar in the net revenue you're not bringing in as opposed to the expense savings. And that's because we do have poor staffing levels and staffing ratios to meet, and we have fixed expenses that don't flex with volume. We will talk about that more as we are entering into 2024 and kind of doubling down on our efforts of deeper dives into the financials, variance analysis, productivity, and things like that. Let's go on to the next slide. So from an inpatient volume, as we've said, you know, all year long, the month of December was no different in terms of the volume. Being lower than budget and also lower than prior year in almost every category: admissions, patient days, Deliveries is probably the one thing that was pretty much spot on year over year. And the December numbers of 69 deliveries were pretty good. You know, the other thing is, while we have aspirations for more surgeries with our cath lab coming on, we actually did exceed the number of surgeries that we did last December, and we're fairly close on the budget side. And then, you know, from a year-to-date perspective, we actually exceeded inpatient surgeries by 13, and our deliveries were actually 62 less than 2022. Next slide, please. Outpatient, you know, we were below budget in total, but on the ER side, we exceeded where we have been running. Definitely on a year-to-date basis, we were 4,367 more ER visits than prior year. And, you know, the outpatient volume side is where we fell short in the month and short on a year-to-date basis. Primarily when we're running short on the outpatient side, it is due to either a staffing issue or some equipment downtime while we're having equipment repaired. The difference in the budget numbers are primarily the fact that we didn't open the cath lab and that we did start slower in the year with the robot assisted cases. We have seen that volume pick up in the last quarter of the year. November was our high month with 21 robot assisted cases, but we did do 14 in December, which, you know, feels pretty good when you consider there's probably a week that's a lot of downtime for people with the holidays. And then the outpatient surgeries, we finished the month at 101, which was spot on with where we were last year in December. Next slide. So here's the look at the payer mix. It's the rolling 12 months of payer mix. And, you know, primarily where things changed in December was that we had a drop in our commercial payer mix, 2% from November. That equates to like 8 patients. But then on the looking at kind of traditional Medicare and Medi-Cal versus our managed Medicare and Medi-Cal, we had more of the traditional and less of the managed care. And usually those managed care contracts just pay slightly better than the traditional. And so that just erodes a little bit of the net revenue potential. Next slide. On the outpatient side, our December payer mix was also less favorable. We were down about 179 commercial patients. You know, a lot of this is ED patients. And we were saw a few more self-insured patients or self-pay or uninsured patients, and fewer again of those managed Medicare or Medi-Cal patients. So a little stronger volume being on the government side and being in ED visits and outpatient visits in general. Government pay on outpatient visits is pretty low. It's usually in your 6-7% of charges. So that's what we saw in that month. Next slide. So a little bit more about 2024. We, as you approved the budget last month, we've been spending a lot of time this month getting those department level budgets, you know, rolled out, spread by month and into the detailed accounts. We're getting close to delivering those to our directors and managers. That's going to allow both the finance team as well as department directors to really drill down for the variance analysis and have a more certainty about some of the changes or the variances we're seeing, comparing them to how we budgeted as opposed to just looking at month over month financials. We've also established productivity standards at the department level. We've been delivering bi-weekly productivity reports to our leaders. We're going to start doing some more in-depth education with the leaders, as well as trying to provide them some better supporting data to really understand if they're missing the mark on productivity standards, or if they're, make sure they understand how that data is derived and delivering the numbers. So a lot of new education, a lot of expanded reporting capabilities to leaders. There's a certain amount of that is on the bi-weekly basis or the monthly basis. And then we're also looking at some data that we can provide on a daily basis so that we can have tighter management over overtime or missed meals and penalty pay type situations. We also have a lot of reporting requirements for our external agencies. One, our distress hospital loan has a significant number of reporting covenants that are due on a quarterly basis, as well as our line of credit. We were able to basically mirror those sets of reporting covenants so that, we're not doing the same work in multiple formats. We have some other lesser ones, but we do some reporting to like Packard Loan, the Packard Group for loan, and MPT for our facility lease. So we're busy working on that. It's everything from a 24-month cash flow update to some narrative around how we're doing on our turnaround plans, to the typical financials. And I'm also starting next week, I will be meeting with our group of guarantors for the line of credit and kind of giving them that same update. And then finally, I call it enhanced cash management. With the ebbs and flows of cash, we are really kind of doubling down all of our efforts in terms of how we're managing cash. Some of this enhanced reporting will allow us to look at more detail and determine where we might have opportunities to reduce, premium pays or missed meal penalties, things like that. We're making sure that now with new productivity standards and flexings that we can manage cash. We have to be very careful here because the cash situation, we do still have a significant dependency on the clock and dish dollars that we receive, but they don't come in on just a standard basis. They are scheduled at the state level. We had some delays in the approval of Quack 8. And so it didn't happen at the end of last year, or it happened at the very end of last year, but we didn't get any monies in last year. And the monies that we're getting this year just got pushed out by about a month. So that requires us to realize, okay, that money is not coming in quite as expected. How do we work towards, making sure that we can secure ourselves until that money comes in? And so it's the management of our finances. It's the, keeping going with our flexing to volumes, which has always been a practice here, and in the hospital industry, but we're gonna even, just tighten that up as much as we can. Continuing our drive on completing initiatives, making sure we can get that cath lab up and open as quickly as possible and start to generate some revenue there. We manage the accounts payable process very closely in the details of when certain vendors get paid, trying to stay as current with all of our vendors as possible, and just making adjustments if, collections are short for the week, making sure we're following up on the revenue cycle side as to getting all of our collections. So it's a tight balance and we are working through that. I will let the board know that this week we did take our first line of credit advance from our $3 million line of credit. We took an advance of $2 million. That will help us. We're processing payroll this week. We have larger AP because it's the first of the month and we have extra bills that are due at the first of the month, such as the MPT lease payment. And it'll just, kind of help us hold over until we have an expected clock payment later this month. So with that, I will take any questions.
So quick question, I have on my calendar a meeting with the creditors next week. Is that the one you were referring to?
I think it's on the February 8th, I think.
Yeah, you want Marcus and I at that meeting still?
You are invited. I love when you guys are at my meetings.
Okay.
So.
So that's the word I was looking for, love.
Love.
I'll jump in with, two questions actually. And always with confidence and appreciation, the improvement that we're making every month, improvement that you're talking to us about in the finance committee are really impressive, and they're moving our organization forward. They're providing our management with tools and our organization with tools that I'm sure they actually appreciate. They have a way to help be part of the solution of continuing our turnaround story. So just thank you for all your efforts. Thank you for leading those charges. Thank you for committing to providing training and resources to all of our employees to help us all kind of manage together. So thank you for that. The two questions I have are about, and I'm not sure, an answer I don't know is appropriate, is appropriate. That's when the state budget, the state of California governor just released his proposed budget to solve a $68 billion shortfall, about a 20% deficit at the state level. From my day job with the county, we're not seeing too many big impacts. They're solving their $68 billion shortfall with a lot of one-time and deferrals and delays. Is there anything that you're seeing or hearing from any associations that we're in that there's any threats to delay in funding or any changes that could impact us? Maybe it's just something we monitor until the May revise comes out.
Yeah, I think it's always a monitoring. I have not heard of anything specific that would like delay a clock payment or a dish payment or anything that's impacting that. Typically, we hear like, oh, there's been another reprieve on a supposed reduction, and it's just, going through the motions. I did recently read something and signed up for a webinar that's in a couple of weeks to learn more, because the Office of Affordability, they're talking about like a 3% cap on growth. And the California Hospital Association is doing their normal, we need to get out in front of this because, 3%, the cost of inflation and salaries, and especially if you have that $25 an hour wage, minimum wage for healthcare workers, all those sorts of things, say that 3% would not be enough of a increase. So what it means for them to cap that is what I don't know. And so I'm gonna join this webinar in a couple of weeks to learn more about that. But other than that, I think we're in a watch and listen mode.
And less of a question, more of this is phrased in an offer of how we might be able to help. As elected officials now, we have relationships with other elected officials. So if there's anything that you hear about in these presentations, that sounds like there's an opportunity for us to advocate and tell our Watsonville story at the state level to any one of the committees that are meeting now about the budget. Just keep us, I'm sure Steve, yours or CEO, you'll make sure we're in the loop on that. But this, we're here to play an important role in that I don't know the hospitals had that resource before. And two, if there's anything on the clock payments of the delays that have already happened, I'm not sure if it's just internal administration, but if there's anything at a policy level that you think or you hear about that we might be able to help with, I just want to remind you that we have some opportunities as elected officials now to represent things in different ways.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Julie from the board? Any questions from the public for Julie? Not seeing any. Rosalie, any people online wanting to make a comment on Julie's report?
I do not see any hands raised online.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 8 then, which is the Powder Valley Healthcare District Corporation nomination of officers. We've been a little bit remiss in our work. We're supposed to go into the new year with new officers, and it slipped through the cracks of us last year. We should have done this work last week. And we need to have president, secretary, treasurer, vice president. So I'm taking the prerogative of the board to appoint an ad hoc committee tonight to look at various people who would be the right folks to be in those roles. And I'm appointing the ad hoc committee to be made up of Marcus Pimentel and Dr. Joe Gallagher and Stephen Gray, and asking them to take a look at the potential offices, the best service as offices for next year, and bring back that recommendation for consideration at the February 28th meeting.
You mean for the remainder of this year and then
Yes,
in the out years?
yes.
With the goal of coming back at the February meeting.
Yes, sir, with the recommendation of who those people should be. Any questions?
I like being voluntold, but I'll just say I accept. Um, Look forward to working with my fellow board member on this. Likewise.
Any public comment on that matter? Not hearing any from the audience. Anything online?
We don't have any hands raised online.
So does
Okay.
the board want to take a vote, have a motion and take a vote?
Yeah, yeah, we need a motion. I was going to ask that next.
I'll move approval of the recommendation to form an ad hoc to report back at the next board meeting. I'll second.
Did you get that, Rosalie?
Yes, sir.
Gallagher, second.
Director. Yes, sir. Thank you. Director Cox,
Yes.
Gallagher,
Yes.
Nunez,
Yes.
and Pimentel.
Yes.
Chair Friel.
Yes. Okay, everyone, thank you for that. We had the president, that was on the medical executive committee report for January. Any public comment on that report? You're not hearing anything from people online?
No hands raised online.
Okay, so I need a motion from the board to accept Dr. Angel's medical executive committee report for January.
So moved.
Second.
Sorry, who was the
Dr.
second?
Gallagher. Dr. Cox seconded.
Thank you.
I'll just add a comment that the materials were included in the packet that were released on Friday. They were very thorough, very comprehensive, and I appreciate the level in which they were provided to us. Just a comment.
Directors Cox,
Yes.
Gallagher,
Yes.
Nunez,
Yes.
Pimentel,
Yes.
Chair Friel.
Yes. Thank you all. So moving on to item number 10, quality report for January. Tracy?
Yes, give the slide, please.
Yes, ma'am. In 1 moment, please.
Okay, great. I'll go ahead and get started. We have our regular quality metrics, and in light of the new dashboard, we'll strategize the duplicating efforts, and we'll see in the future what makes best sense to implement to this committee. Next slide. And next one. Go ahead. This is our all cause readmissions, and it looks very nice, actually, if you see the blue line going down. We are at the Q2, which is the latest available date from HSAG. We are at 11.31 with a goal rate of 15.89. So we are doing very well at not having bounce back readmissions at this time from our Medicare patients. Next slide, please. Next slide is mortality, and mortality also for Q3 was below the goal rate. We are 7.6. That was a 13 out of 171 patients for the quarter. So strong work in mortality as well. Next slide. We go through these rather quickly. Catheter-associated urinary tract infection and central line-associated bloodstream infection. These are hospital-acquired infections that we monitor and track, and we have not had a reportable for over 2 years in both of these categories. So we will continue to monitor our process around those and are happy to share that with you. Next slide, please. The third major hospital-acquired organism is Clostridium difficile, and we have had some challenges. You can see the line is far from smooth there when we're looking at our graph. Q2 performed rather well at 0.86. The goal rate is 1.06. We unfortunately had an incident in December, and we've had 2 in January. So that continues to plague us, and we are exploring some new methods to help us decrease that, and we do have a task force actively working on that right now. The metric on the right side of the page is our surgical site infection rate for colon surgeries, and the SIR, which is the standardized infection ratio, cannot be measured due to our low denominator. So we're doing actually very well in that category, but we can't calculate the SIR because of the low volume of surgical cases there. Next slide, please. Falls and falls with injury. Our national benchmark here is 3.44. We are 3.49 for the year 2023 ending. Some good improvements on reducing falls and also improvements on falls with injuries. Although the fall with injury rate there is listed as 0.46, our most significant injury was we had one patient with sutures, but no significant injury from fall noted in 2023. Next slide, please. We're also another hospital-acquired condition that we work diligently to avoid are hospital-acquired pressure injuries. And you'll notice that the last quarter did very well with significant reductions. We worked closely with our home care treatment center with their certified wound-ostomy continence nurses and our floor nurses to provide excellent care and turning our patients and recognition and offloading upon admission as well. So we are unfortunately at this we ended calendar year 2023 above the national benchmark. So we'll continue to work on that moving forward. Next slide, please. Quarterly measures for the emergency department. You can see the volumes have remained pretty steady there. Left without being seen was a rate that was asked to track by the board, and they have consistently performed very well over the past year and have consistently remained under the national benchmark of 2 with Q3 of 2023 at 1.11. So timely care in the ED is the associated reflection of that care. Next slide, please. This is the HCAHPS data for the year ending 2023, and we have the measures on the board here. We are meeting the California average in a lot of our categories. However, when we compare that to national averages and the 70th percentile, we have some work to do in this area. And as our CEO, Steve Gray, alluded to, we have plans in place to work on improving those measures in the coming year. Next slide, please. Enhanced recovery after surgery is an evidence-based protocol that's now becoming a surgical standard of care. We were able to successfully implement that in 2023 here among our colorectal and orthopedic populations. We're expanding that to all inpatient surgical patients this quarter, and also partnering with our C-section physician lead that's been identified for Dr. Cox to bring those measures to the OB surgical population, and ultimately by the end of 2024 to use the enhanced recovery paradigm to improve the care for all of our patients. Very important aspects of that are around multimodal analgesia, helping to decrease opioids, early mobility, early ambulation, making sure our patients maintain their level of functionality that they entered with instead of having a significant decline after hospitalization or surgery. That concludes the report. There's just one more slide for questions.
I have got one. Can you go back to the HCAHPS scores
Yes, sir.
on cleanliness? I see a lot of red there. Do we have a contract service for housekeeping, or is that internally operated?
In-house.
It's in-house?
It's in-house.
So what do we think our problem is?
Well, if you notice the improvement over the last few periods, just increasing the rounding on the rooms and whatnot, and some of the things that we're doing within the ES department is, yeah, we've reinstituted the use of tent cards, letting people know sometimes people are asleep while the ES staff are in their cleaning, so they don't see them cleaning and assuming that they're not. So putting tent cards on the lower bed tables lets them know that somebody has been there cleaning. And then just circling back, rounding afterwards to check to see if there's anything else that can be done. So it's cyclical. We struggled through COVID with staffing issues, and staffing is not an issue at this point. So it's a matter of educating and just getting the staff on board with.
So we have a full complement of staff in that department, or is that
We do.
a struggle to fill it?
It's on and off, but currently it's a full complement of stuff.
Thank you.
A question. Well, I'll start with a comment. Gratitude, humility. Chair Frill, thank you for pointing that out. I mean, we started the year not so great in a couple categories. I count 9 categories in the first half of the year that were yellow, below where we wanted to be, and 3 reds. And then we finished the year with from 9 total down to 4 areas, 3 yellows and a red, and we got a blue. We got 1 way above our target line. So I like how we finished the year. I like the trend we're going. So this data is really, really encouraging. So thank you for that. Is it ignorant question? Is it common? Is it capable? Are we able, or is it practical, or is it functional or allowed to see actual data with other hospitals in the areas instead of just California average or 70th percentile? Is it?
Yes.
We can, it's much more lagged because it would be on a publicly reported website, like a hospitalcompare.org, where you can look at other local hospitals and what they are on most of these questions. You could get that. So if that's something that the board would like to see, we could bring that in a future HCAPS drill down.
I think view it as a operational improvement at some point in time would be appreciated, but I don't know it's urgent. I mean, I like, this is great data right now for us. But I think it'd be helpful as we move forward to just know how our peers are doing and how we compare the peers around us and really need it. Great, thank you. This is really good.
Joe?
I'm going to thank Steve and I thank Tracy earlier for the full name, not just the acronym. That's what makes it easier for you and me to understand it. The other question, I may have missed it and I'll ask you later if I did. What's your personal impression of how colorectal and ortho went in the pilot in July? Do you have thoughts, comments?
I think that colorectal went smoother than ortho. I just in that the physicians were a little bit more engaged and were coastal partners versus maybe someone else. So we're working to make sure that all of our outlying physicians that are not directly associated with the hospital also have the materials that they need. We did roll out the order sets. And we just had a huge transition in our OR to electronic medical records. So they've been a lot of turnover, not turnover, excuse me, that's not the appropriate word, a lot of change going on in that department, but a lot of synergy around this particular measure. So I think it's going well overall. And I can bring more discrete data on that in the future.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Tracy?
Just one question, just to make sure I understand what it means. In the left being seen, what are we qualifying as seen? What does seen mean? Is that in a room with a doctor, or what is
They
that
leave before they're seen by the physician.
by the physician? Okay, cool, thank you.
So they've had a medical screening exam, they're waiting for a provider to see them and they leave.
They have their triage and they're waiting.
And those are really good numbers.
Yeah, those are very
Yeah,
good numbers.
I mean, you don't see it under 2% very often. So to keep it at between 1% and 1.5% pretty consistently is really very good.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks, Tracy. Okay, moving on to number 11, Standing Committee Pilot Program in the Pajaro Valley Healthcare District Hospital Corporation bylaw update. Steve?
Yeah, thank you. So for this, we're going to request a motion. The goal here is to make our committees, our board committees more effective, right? So we have 4 standing board committees in the bylaws, and they have had varying levels of success and effectiveness so far in our first 15, 16 months of life as a district. The Julie's Finance Committee has been the one that has really succeeded in its mission of meeting consistently and performing its duties and always having a quorum. The Strategic Planning and Marketing Committee has not met. And the other 2 committees, Quality and Patient Safety and Employee Engagement, have met much less frequently than they would have liked to because of the challenges of gaining a quorum. And they also duplicate efforts for staff. Staff have hospital committees that do this work, and then they duplicate that effort to get ready for a board committee meeting that often ends up not happening because of a lack of a quorum. So I am recommending this motion as mostly as written, but I'm going to go through it here a little bit. So the recommendation is that the board moves to pause to do a pilot for the next 6 months, so through June, where we pause the Quality and Patient Safety Committee and we pause the Employee Engagement Committee, and instead invite board members, one or two board members to each of those already existing hospital committees. So that we can ensure that the meetings always happen, because they always do happen on the hospital side, and still achieve the goal of having public transparency, because we will have Tracy's report here, we will have Allison give a quarterly report on employee engagement, and we'll have two board members who can add their experiences and observations from those committees at this board meeting as well. I would also ask that we indicate as a board that we are good with the strategic planning and marketing committee meeting as needed. The way I would envision that committee is one that meets on a regular basis at least once annually prior to our budgeting process, right? So we want to have all of our budgets and metrics and targets set by the end of December for the following year, so that we can hit the ground running on January 1st. And so the budgeting process typically, runs from September-ish to November to December, and then it's finalized in December. So ideally, we would do that strategic planning process closer to the beginning and before the budget starts to hit, so that the strategy informs the budget, and then the budget informs the goals, and then it moves on from there. So I would say that the strategy and marketing committee should meet in probably the July to October timeframe kind of a thing, once or twice or three times, depending on how many times the committee feels like it needs to meet in order to inform the goals and the budget for the next year, so that it rolls into that. Item number 3 inside item number 11 here is really more of an example, because that's not something that we can actually do without formally modifying the bylaws. We can't actually change the recommended number of members without changing the bylaws. So I think that's something that would get folded into number 4, which is that in July or August, we'll come back to this body with all of the bylaw recommended changes, which will include looking at sort of making sure we have the right balance of representation and reasonableness for committee membership structure, as well as editing what committees we want to keep as standing committees versus integrate board work with pre-existing hospital work, and any other bylaw changes that might need to be made now that we've been a district for a year and a half. So I will take any questions on the motion, and I think the motion should be sort of as written, with the understanding that number 3 won't happen until we update bylaws later in the summer. And I didn't see Noel get off mute, so I must not have done that wrong. Okay, good, thanks.
I feel like today more full of comments than questions or revisions, but I just appreciate the framing of that. I'll admit, speaking on behalf of Chair Frill, I think we both feel a little protective and appreciate the finance committee. It's been a really, really functional committee, and I appreciate all the work and the staff and the time involved in that. So I like the approach of we're not making a change now, but indicating that there's some things we can do to just make it work more efficiency. And I'll also share a comment that this is right in line with the County Board of Supervisors on Tuesday this week.
That's right.
Found a lot of the same thing. We took on an effort and we found this duplicative work. We had internal committees, board appointed committees that were doing the same thing. And it was just creating a lot of confusion on who's doing what and what their purpose is. And just cleared up a lot of that, and the committee members all appreciate that, because now they'll be more efficient with their time.
They dissolved the commission on it.
Yeah, yes, sorry about that, but I think the work is still being done.
Try not to take it personally.
So I think this is the right time to evaluate that. And I'll just also, just mention for anybody watching or for just documenting this, a lot of the framework of these committees were set up in the beginning before we even knew how this was gonna be.
Totally.
I think we set it up before we even took over operations of the hospitals, maybe in March, April, May of before the September 2022 start date. So we're anticipating where we might want to be available with the ultimate aim of being accessible to the public, but more importantly, being accessible and hearing the voices of staff. And I really love that we're gonna, instead of creating a meeting and say, staff join us, we go to where the staff already are. So I really appreciate that framing, because I think in the end, when you go to where people already are, it's just so much more efficient and effective versus holding a meeting and telling people, meet here. So I appreciate the whole approach on this.
So I'd just like to add to that, you're absolutely right, in that we were trying to get the bylaws passed and we sort of pieced together something rather rapidly, knowing full well that could change, and then it did change when we had a change of leadership. And I think it's good that we're waiting. We now have Stephen on board. He's got his own ideas about how these committees ought to work. He brings his expertise to the table, and I think we ought to see the opportunity for him to express his recommendations, and we try to support them where we can. So thank you, Stephen, for getting on this so quickly within your first 120 days.
Today's,
Sooner.
I think today's my 90-day anniversary.
90 days. So anyway, thank you for doing that. So I think this is a good move. Any other questions for Steve about this recommended motion? Or I ask anybody in the audience if they'd like to make a comment? Not seeing any hands raised. Rosalie, anybody online like to make a comment?
No one online, sir.
We're online. So I think we need a motion to implement this, given the motion that Stephen had suggested. So if somebody on the board would like to make the motion, this is a good time.
I'll make a motion, then I have a comment if there's a second.
I'll second.
So my comment is just that, as I think, Katie, we're both on the strategic planning and marketing committee, and we haven't met since then, and I think moving it to as needed, I think that's the right. I want to make sure that, from Nancy's perspective, her marketing department, she finds kind of her groove and when it would make sense for us to jump in, and also community members who might end up joining that committee. So I just appreciate the work, Steve. 90 days. I got an email today. Thank you for that. I just appreciate your work and everyone on your staff. So thank you.
All right, thank
So
you. I'll
you
do
vote on the
control.
motion?
Yes.
Rosalie,
Director
would you vote?
Yes.
Gallagher,
Yes.
Nunez,
Yes.
Pimentel,
Yeah.
Chair Friel.
Yes. Thank you. So item number 12 is the Powell Valley Healthcare District Corporation Consolidated Audited Agreement. Julie, you want to tell us about this?
Sure. Feels like we were just talking on it, not too long ago, a couple months ago. That was the 2022 opening balance sheet financial statement audit. Now that we have finished a full year of 2023, we are embarking on our 2023 audit. And that will be the first full year audit. We are going to use the same auditors that we use. So Gerald Tucker and his firm will be leading the audit. We've actually already started sending them data. We've established a meeting cadence that during the month of February, we're gonna meet bi-weekly just to get regular updates and kind of take findings or education in small doses so that we can make sure we have plenty of time to ask questions and understand any adjustments we might need to make to our processes. In March, we will be meeting weekly. I've set the target that we would really like to be bringing the audited financial statement draft and having Gerald come to the meeting at the end of March. That's gonna be very tight. And so if we're not quite done, it will come to the April meeting. But the preference for coming to March is really around reporting covenants that we have with our loans and lines of credit. And, you know, wanting to avoid having to ask for extensions if we can at all possible do that. The cost of the audit is $28,000. We all anticipate it's gonna be a lot easier than 2022 was, because we've just recently done a lot of the work, and, you know, we kind of have sorted through a lot of the knowledge finding around the district and the hospital and the structure. So information that we are well underway with the next audit.
Thank you. Any questions to Julie? Comments from the public? Still nobody online, Rosalie?
No hands raised online, sir.
Okay, so we do need a motion to approve this $28,000.
I'll happily approve staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Gallagher,
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
Pimentel,
Yes.
Sheriff Rail.
Yes. Okay, we're at the end of our agenda, so we'll adjourn the meeting.